What's up, everybody? I'm really excited. I've got a really cool video planned for today. Today, we're going to be talking about building wealth through real estate, but more specifically, the first steps that anybody can take no matter where they are at in life. These are the first beginning steps to start building that wealth throughout the rest of your life. To start this journey, you do not need to be a millionaire. You do not need to have rich parents. Anybody can start, and it's very important to start as soon as you can. Now, although I did say investing in real estate, we are not going to be talking about flipping, wholesaling, or anything like that today. We are way before that. We are talking the very first steps. Naturally, we're going to start off with step number one. We need to get the full financial picture for you specifically and where you're at. This is exactly what I mean when I say anybody can take these tips and start today. Your credit is going to be super important when a bank looks at you to decide what type of loan they're going to give you and on what terms. So you need to see where your credit is sitting right now. Maybe you know, maybe you don't. If you don't have a good idea of all of your accounts, what your score is, and why, you need to go to myfreecreditreport.com. Once a year, you can get this free report. It will list from all three of the bureaus, every account you have and what standing it's in. Any problems, you're going to need to go ahead and address it first. And if your credit is not great, you're going to need to work on it first. Take this information that you just found out today and use it in the future going forward. Work on paying some of those accounts off, making sure all of your accounts are in good standing. You're typically going to want a credit score 720 or up, and you're going to get great loan terms. Step number one is all about being prepared financially. And naturally, no matter what, when you're buying a house, you are going to need to plan to save up some money. Even though we're talking about purchasing this home as a primary residence, and those loan terms are very favorable, as low as 3% down conventional, you are still going to have to plan to come out of pocket some money. Typically, the first-time homebuyers that I am working with are putting between 3 to 5% down and saving about another 1% aside for closing costs. Now, the last part here about your whole financial picture is you're going to want to make sure you have a good job history. If you've been getting paid under the table for the last 5 years, there's a pretty good chance that the bank is not going to like that. You need to show your income on your taxes. Whether you're self-employed, 1099 independent contractor, or just a regular full-time salary employee, everybody is going to look different. Typically, the bank is going to want to see between 1 to 2 years of your employment history. And step number two, now that we have your full financial picture, if your credit was not so great, now you've had the opportunity to work on it and get it to where it needs to be. Now you need to take all this information and go get yourself pre-approved. I'm a very big advocate for finding a local lender or bank in your area because they're going to know all of the nuances in your market. It is incredibly important, especially for areas like where I'm at, where I'm on the beach. There are a lot of different insurance requirements and things that can affect this purchase. When making a purchase this big, you really want to make sure that the terms are as favorable to you as they can be. I would recommend approaching a few different lenders, whether it be a local bank that you already work with or a recommended mortgage broker in your area. I would suggest going to both and shopping around rates and seeing what each of them can do for you. You're going to provide them with a few documents and they're going to come back and tell you what you are pre-approved for, what the maximum budget is that you have to purchase a home. And with that, you'll also get an estimated payment. It's important to note, I'm not saying you should max out your budget. You need to look at your payment and make sure that it's something that you and your family are comfortable with paying each and every month. You should be reading the fine print, asking any questions you may have, because this is a big decision and you want to make sure you know everything up front. If you don't already know somebody, asking around in your community is a great way to find somebody who's going to be highly recommended and good to work with. And now here we are, step number three, interviewing real estate agents. I'm going to give you a couple insider tips here because I myself am a real estate agent. I just read some crazy statistic that last year, 49% of agents sold either one or no houses. I really don't mean to offend anybody here, but that person is probably not going to be able to help you as good as somebody selling 20, 30, 40 homes in your market every year. They just really don't have the experience required to serve you best. So again, you need to do your homework and find a few full-time agents who are consistently selling homes in the cities that you want to move to. Again, a great way to find some of these people are asking the community, seeing who they've already used and love to work with. I would highly recommend contacting at least a few and making sure that your personalities are going to be a good match when working together on what is probably going to be the largest purchase of your life. If you're not a good match, that's totally okay. People operate very differently. The most important thing is making sure that you are comfortable, informed, and feel great throughout this process. You really want to find somebody that can educate you, answer all of your questions, because you do not want to end up regretting this purchase later. Now that brings us to step number 4. Start looking at houses. Finally. You might already have some sort of an idea, but you really need to make sure that you're narrowing down to specific neighborhoods, school district, and you're in close proximity to all the things that you do throughout your day-to-day life. Whether that be shopping, grocery stores, dining, make sure that the location is going to work for you, because that's the one thing that you can't change. Once you're physically in these homes and comparing them, you're going to really start nailing down what you need out of a home and what you might be okay with living with for now. As I said before, the location, number one most important thing. Maybe the dishwasher is white and doesn't match the rest of the stainless appliances. Okay, that's not that big of a deal. You can change it later down the road, but the location, you can't. Take note of all the big ticket items like the HVAC, the roof, plumbing, electrical, and things like that, because those are things that you do not want to get stuck with a huge bill to repair any of them as soon as you buy this house. The time will come where you find the one. And now we're at step number 5, putting in your offer. You might only have to put in one offer and get your dream house, or maybe it takes 100. It really all depends on the market and the price point you're specifically in. This is the point where you're going to be thanking me for recommending you to really do your research and find a good agent, because they know how to write competitive offers and win you the house. And no, that doesn't just mean us recommending you to throw a bunch of money at the sellers. That's not always the best way to do it. Sellers often have lots of other motivation aside from money. The offer that wins is always going to look different, and a good real estate agent is going to know what questions they need to ask to get you the house. So your awesome agent got you the house. You went through the inspections, you got your appraisal back, you went to closing, and now the keys are yours. What's next? Like I said in the very beginning, there are so many ways to create wealth through real estate, but I really wanted to focus on the easiest way to get started. These are the 2 methods I usually see people take, and one of them is what I personally did myself as well. Number 1 is going to be the most appealing if you prefer something turnkey with little work needed. Take a minute, rewind back to step number 4 when we're still looking at homes. We need to do a little bit of self-reflection here. If you are not handy, do not have the extra budget set aside to pay a contractor, or maybe have little kids running around, you need to find something that is turnkey and you can pretty much move into right away with little to no work required. Maybe it just needs a fresh coat of paint and a few things here and there down the road, but trust me, if I just described you, you're going to thank me. Go this route. So you purchased this home as a primary residence, so that way you could put 3 to 5% down and get into it with very little money. The bank is almost always going to require that you live there for at least a year, but that's all right, because everybody's got to live somewhere. This is by no means a get-rich-quick scheme. It takes time, but 15 to 30 years down the road, you're going to have a bunch of paid off houses that are cash flowing you a ton of money every month. Because once that year is up, it's time to rent this property and go purchase your next primary residence for you and your family to live in. There's a couple different strategies here. You could do a traditional long-term tenant. They'll usually sign a year lease at a time, and it is very hands-off. On the other hand, if you're in a market like me, where we're on the beach, short-term rentals are very appealing. You can typically make up to 4 times as much money as a long-term rental, but it is way, way more involved. If you're taking the more hands-off approach of a traditional long-term tenant, you should aim to at least cover the mortgage, taxes, insurance, any other utilities or expenses like that, and probably clear a couple $100s a month. So now you might be wondering, how is an extra $100 going to help you build generational wealth? Well, the $100 is not. But what you need to keep in mind is that your tenant is paying off your house. Every single month, the equity that you have in that property is building. It's like the greatest savings account ever. Except here, you get to take advantage of the appreciation over this time also. I don't think there's any bank that does that. So if that method didn't really excite you, listen up, because this second method is exactly what I did to create almost $200,000 of equity in just a couple of months. Again, flashback here to step number 4 when we're just starting to look at these houses. You want to tell your agent to focus on sending you houses that you can get some sweat equity out of. This is where that old saying, buy the worst house in the best neighborhood, comes from. If you have some extra money set aside to pay contractors to do it, or if you just have a DIY attitude, I promise you that you can do this. As promised, I want to share my real life example. I found this ugly duckling here that nobody wanted. It was honestly terrible and super scary, also I should mention. But because nobody wanted this house, I was able to negotiate $7,500 of seller paid closing costs. Getting that credit and only having to put 3.5% down, I literally bought a house for just a few $1,000s out of pocket. This is definitely a bit of an extreme example, and I don't recommend it for everybody unless you have the stomach for it. But in the first month or two, me and my dad tore this thing up and completely redid the inside of the house. Over the past year of living here, we continued progress slowly, but now there are houses way smaller selling for nearly double what I paid for this house. By purchasing the ugly duckling at a lower price than everything else in the neighborhood and doing repairs myself, that created a huge gap of equity. If you're willing to put in the work on nights and weekends, there is literally no better way to create this amount of money. Now that this house is just about done, we're looking for the next one to do this exact strategy and buy our next primary residence, rent this one out, and do it all over again. I know that real estate investing sounds incredibly intimidating, and there are way too many gurus out there on social media just spreading this information. It's really not that complicated, but you do have to just take the first steps. This guide is not meant to be me promising you make millions of dollars in the next year. This is for the average Joe who is just looking to set themselves and their family up for the future. Literally anybody can take the first few steps to start getting themselves in a position to do this. Again, you do not need a ton of money in the bank or rich parents to be able to do any of this. If this fires you up or sparks any sort of interest in doing this yourself, please reach out to me. Whether you're local to me here in Eastern North Carolina or anywhere else in the United States, I am an open book on how I'm using this strategy myself, and I think it would be really cool to help other people get started as well. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching, and make sure you click the subscribe button if you're interested in learning more about all things real estate.